once you collect all the right people and the right disciplines and you put that under one umbrella, I mean, if you look at the icon and the logo, that's purposely designed to formalize that idea that there is no one piece that's more important than the other. All of those disciplines linked together. There's a strength on the other side of it that you just can't beat.
My job for any client is to say, okay, what is the challenge you have at hand? And it's then my responsibility to bring in those right resources, those right people, regardless of what division they may lie in, to the table to solve that problem. And it's not the model of, oh, well, that's a different group, so you've got to go deal with a different person. Or, oh, we've got to sign a new scope of work or a new contract with you because now I need to bring in one of my consultant teams and they're not part of the AOR teams. Those are those friction points where clients go, you know what, this is too much work.
The world of pharma marketing continues to evolve with multiple ongoing challenges. Creating more results with less resources, navigating political and economic uncertainties, overcoming a less than favorable industry public perception, and adapting to the ever-present impact of AI. What remains in place throughout all of these variables is the client and AOR relationship. Hello and welcome to the MM+M podcast. I'm Managing Editor Jack O'Brien. For today's conversation, we're focused on transforming the client-AOR relationship from being considered transactional to that of a strategic partnership. We will look to discuss multiple ways in which this relationship can evolve to help foster stronger, truer strategic partnership, resulting in greater wins and achievement for both sides. I'm pleased to be joined today by two leaders at the Woven Health Collective, Francesca Lucarelli, EVP of Promotional Marketing, and Dennis Leahy, Chief Creative Officer. Francesco and Dennis, it's wonderful to have you on the show. How are you both doing today?
Real good. Thanks, Jack. Pleasure to join you.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Doing well.
I appreciate you being on here. It's such an interesting topic to cover because it comes up so much whenever I'm talking to certainly industry folks on the agency side and even on the brand side, marketing side of the equation. Let's start, though, with the kind of the big picture. And Dennis, I'll throw it over to you first. Why are so many AOR relationships transactional in nature, or at least perceived to be?
Yeah, thanks, Jack. I think over time, a lot of the AOR relationship, they drift from partnership into production mindset. So, the system starts rewarding people for volume and speed instead of impact and transformation. And when that happens, agencies like us, you become a vendor instead of a partner. The brand stops evolving. And then, sometimes the clients start to look elsewhere. They look for agencies that lean in differently, that do have that partnership, that want to bring the magic to the brand. So you just got to stay ahead of it and, be their true partner.
Francesca, do you have anything to add in terms of that transactionality?
Additionally to that, I think it's interesting. I think we as an industry have done ourselves a little bit of a disservice as well. So, having spent 30 years now on various sides, from the client side to the agency side of the world, I think where we have witnessed some of this change in market dynamics is the fact that the larger holding groups, the networks, these big monolithic structures have unfortunately walked away from true partnerships and evolved into, as Dennis was saying, more of the, high volume, let's churn and burn more. And through that, relationships have changed. The expectations have been set a bit differently. And from a client perspective, that's what's leading to some of these expectations to go back, if you will, to days of old, as I would say, where, it really was, you're in the foxholes together. You're really in there looking at, let's diagnose challenges, let's come up with solutions, and let's look at things differently. Let's look at things creatively. Let's not just say, hey, this is the way it's been done 4 times in the past. Let's actually say there is a different way to skin the proverbial cat.
Definitely. And I want to be able to talk about maybe what that relationship looks like going forward. And you were alluding to it a little bit, so I'll throw it back to you and then bring Dennis into the conversation. But talk a little bit about those breaking points / breakdowns in many AOR relationships. You talk a little bit about kind of the institutional factors that might be out there. But I mean, I know that happens too at indie agencies just as much as it does at holding companies. Like, what are some of those other causes out there?
Yeah, there's several, and I think we would spend hours trying to diagnose and go into all of them. But top line, Jack, some of the ones that immediately come to fruition are, as simple as it may sound, truth, transparency, and authenticity. We've all heard the horror stories about the bait and switches of the world, or senior organizational leaders that show up at a pitch and then show up at an annual review and nothing in between. One of the items that, we pride ourselves in within Woven, and I will say prior to that, as Boundless, myself and Carrie, we were acquired by Woven back in July of last year, and it was by design. And part of the reason why we joined Woven was from that mindset shift of really being, this is an authentic relationship that we bring to all of our clients. So the individuals that you meet are the individuals that are involved in the business, holding on to that. The second big component, I think, where some of those friction points or breakdowns are truly at the level of who are the true day-to-day leaders that work on business, and are they empowered to make decisions on their own, or are they merely, dare I say, a cog in the machine? And that's something that really trips up relationships, because when there are the people that are the proverbial frontline folks that are in the day-to-day with their clients, and they're not empowered to make those decisions, or they don't feel well enough versed to look at a dynamic that's going on within a client, market dynamic to come up with a solution, or to make let's say a high stress call in the moment, and they've always got to go back to 2 and 3 and 4 layers of leadership above them, that tends to, diffuse any confidence that the client has. And then going back to what Dennis said earlier, you're now not a partner anymore. You're just a, doer. And that, unfortunately, is something that really changes the scale of these type of relationships.
I love that explanation. Dennis, I'd love for you to weigh in from a creative perspective, because I've talked to a number of medical marketing chief creative officers, and they've talked about that too, where it's like, yeah, sometimes, you're the old trope is that you get pitched the A team as a client, and then suddenly you're dealing with the D or the C team in terms of creative or strategy or something like that. And that's a true frustration. I'm curious what that looks like on your end.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. I think what it looks like from a creative perspective is the reason we acquired Boundless, or some of the acquisitions that we've made, is we're really only building A teams. So the clients don't get that bait and switch. We kind of set them up, like Francesco said from the beginning, to go, this is your team, your core team. They're surrounded by strong leadership that will be present, and that we hire really great craftsmen, great strategists, digital people. So instead of them being separate teams or people that lean in differently, it really is felt by the clients, and we hear it from them when they deal with us. They're like, wow, you guys, it's just different. It feels different. And then once you come out of the gate with that trust and that good energy, I think it's just being true to that over time. Because like Francesco said, once they feel that slippage, there's no way to get that back. You've lost that credibility. So starting strong, building the right teams, and living up to the promise of what you're saying you're going to do, I think is key.
Definitely. And I want to ask too, because it's part of the name, Woven Health Collective. Talk a little bit, and maybe again, it's from the creative perspective, and then Francesco can illuminate from more of the strategic lens. But what does collective mean to you? Like we hear that all the time, but like, what does that actually mean in terms of how your business runs?
Yeah, I mean, healthcare problems are complex to solve, and you can't do that with one discipline. So the collective model, again, strategy, creative, medical, digital, experience design, they all work together from the start in the foxhole together, as Francesco said earlier, and it's less like a factory or production kind of house at that point. And it's more like a creative lab, everyone getting together, excited to have that similar mission. And healthcare, for people that are passionate about it, it's a calling. We're not marketing shoes or beer or things like that. So we all have family members struggling from things that we deal with. So you're passionate to be in this space. So again, I think once you collect all the right people and the right disciplines and you put that under one umbrella, I mean, if you look at the icon and the logo, that's purposely designed to formalize that idea that there is no one piece that's more important than the other. All of those disciplines linked together, there's a strength on the other side of it that you just can't beat.
I'll take it a step further, even, Jack. And when I look at collective, and I've had this conversation a number of times in the past weeks, even take the Marxist, idea of collective off the shelf for a moment. Let's put that aside, but really looking at what's intuitively behind the definition of a collective, right? It's about bringing the best of experience, talent, expertise to the table to solve a problem collectively or together. And from my perspective and how I've been sharing this with clients, and again, I'll go back to the reason why Boundless went this way. We were very fortunate. We had a number of different suitors out there without getting into the history of it, but this was the right fit for that very reason, because the collective mentality is that we solve client problems by bringing the right resources to the table. Dennis and I were just up in Boston with clients last week, and as I expressed it to them, my job for any client is to say, okay, what is the challenge you have at hand? And it's then my responsibility to bring in those right resources, those right people, regardless of what division they may lie in, to the table to solve that problem. And it's not the model of, oh, well, that's a different group, so you've got to go deal with a different person. Or, oh, we've got to sign a new scope of work or a new contract with you because now I need to bring in one of my consultant teams and they're not part of the AOR teams. Those are those friction points where clients go, you know what, this is too much work. You guys are supposed to be making our lives easier, not more difficult and challenging. And so we feel that we've done that really well here. We feel that we've diagnosed that problem and come up with a solution differently than the way a lot of other groups do. And the last thing I'll say about the collective mentality, I mean, where in the world is it a guy like Dennis out of Columbus, Ohio can get along with a Wolverine like myself? And, we've managed to make it work.
I'm so glad you were able to put aside your petty Big Ten differences for the sake of medical marketing. That's really admirable. Dennis, you had something you want to say?
Oh, no, I agree. I think in clients' head, they're nodding. We're doing the pitch. We're talking about why we're different. And you can see in their face when they've had bad experiences with agency networks and large networks, they're like, oh, yeah, oh, my gosh. And they'll tell you a story. And it's a story that you could tell is emotionally troubling for them, because as a marketer, they only move up in their job if they launch successfully or they do the job successfully. So there's a lot on the line for people that bring a partner in and they rely on us to kind of move their brand forward. So when that slippage starts or they feel duped or they don't feel that collective energy or support, again, it becomes transactional. It falls apart pretty quickly.
I want to talk about the elephant in the room too, which is when I think about the expectations that clients have for their agencies, especially as it turns more into that of a business partnership, is being able to leverage AI. And I'm curious how that factors into all this, because I know that I've talked to a bunch of agencies that are like, yeah, my clients are asking how we're using it, both in terms of cutting costs, ideating on creative, distribution, all that sort of stuff, down to the very administrative minutia. So I'm curious how AI has really impacted what Woven has been doing over the past year or so.
Yeah, I'll leave the creative side of it to Dennis, because I know, Dennis, you've got a lot of great experience there to speak about and some things that we've done for clients pretty quickly and rapidly that's been advantageous. But organizationally, both from an operational side of it and from a workflow perspective, the agency's embracing it. We've brought it forward in a number of different disciplines, both on the digital omnichannel optimization side of it, but also just in the ways of working internally. So streamlining everything from brief development through to execution. Each of our independent groups, i.e. account, project management, creative, they're all being trained on an ongoing basis. So have we solved the proverbial silver bullet? No. Are we well on our way to being well versed and adept at it? Yes. We're continuing to measure metrics internally, both in terms of how often it's being utilized, where it's being utilized, and what that is doing from an efficiency standpoint. And we are looking at measuring going forward, what are those cost savings, both internally, but more importantly, to the client side from a financial perspective. So as we continue to evolve in this space, we'll continue to do more. We are already seeing with some of our clients, we've integrated it into beginnings of draft workflow development on things like websites and even elements of the PRC review process, which I know is a sticking point at a number of clients. So, I would say an A for effort, and also from a standpoint of the future forecast on it, it's definitely something that we're investing heavily in.
Yeah, and to build on that, Francesco, from the creative side, having early access in a company that says, we need to be on the forefront and be ahead of this. So all the creative folks had early access to all the different models through Perplexity. Then through different client projects, internal projects, we would get together, do creative town halls and share successes and share ways that we were using it. So quickly we had a collective within the collective that was really sharp at using AI. And a quick story, a client came to us and their AOR had 6 months to do concepts for one of the biggest HIV launches for Gilead, and the senior directors like, the stuff falling flat, same old pharma tropes. Can you guys throw an idea in the mix? And that was on a Thursday. Research, the next round was Tuesday. So we got, a group together, what we call a wave. You get writers, designers, you get all the creatives together. And I think it's important to generate real ideas from real humans, and don't use AI to do all of your idea generation. Otherwise, everyone's going to get the same stuff from the same brief. But after generating ideas over the weekend, we were able to deliver 8 campaign platforms, fully comped, fully written, fully done. And one of those ended up becoming the launch concept for the brand. So quickly from that client, without AI, we're like, we could have never gotten there. We never could have pulled it off. So, like Francesco said, I think there's some efficiency things there, but when everyone's pumping out all this AI content, I think it also forces us to have a little bit higher level taste level and kind of sift through the okay to get to the great.
I just have to keep reminding Dennis to lower those expectation barriers of over the weekend, as once clients hear that, they're like, oh, great. So I need this thing by Monday. And it's like, oh.
Yeah, don't spread yourself too thin there, Dennis.
Yep. That was a one-off. And luckily, the client's like, okay, we get it. And we got a full runway to do the next couple jobs. So, yeah.
No, and I appreciate you pointing to a specific example, too, because I think we're at that point where it's like, okay, so we figure everyone is experimenting and doing stuff in AI, but being able to actually point to a specific process, a specific client, and be able to illuminate that is certainly helpful for us who are kind of watching it from a 35,000 foot perspective. But I want to wrap the conversation here with kind of a more, I don't want to say existential question, but I guess it kind of is, in terms of like what keeps you in the game. And Francesco, I'll throw it over to you first, because you guys did get purchased. And I've seen plenty of people that, like, when their agency gets bought up and you talked about having multiple suitors and stuff, it's like that's a time where they, maybe they check out and they look for a different opportunity or something. But like you, if anything, have been reinvigorated and doubled down. So talk about me about like what keeps you going, what's next, like what can we expect?
Yeah, thanks, Jack. I think you're calling me old in a nice way, on one hand, and the other hand,
you're reading the subtext there.
On the other hand, I can't get your gig, so I'm kind of stuck here. But no, all kidding aside, you're right. I will pick up on that word you said, reinvigorate, because that has been what it's been. It's been a breath of fresh air. It's been very exciting. We were at a growth phase with Boundless where we were looking for that right synergy and that right partnership. And we found that in Woven. And the collective mentality is exactly what is the reason for my reinvigoration. I tell people all the time, I consider myself a builder because I'm constantly trying to put pieces together to see, okay, what's next and how can we solve this puzzle? And that's precisely what we have. Dennis is representative of just a phenomenal colleague now that we both look at things with a similar mindset. We're able to say, what are the challenges ahead? How can we do things different? How can we continue to look at the market landscape, our competitors, and try and stay one step ahead? So the reinvigoration, to reuse that word again, is about the spirit that the group brings together. We're not resting on laurels. We're not sitting here saying, hey, we've proven ourselves and we've done that. We're constantly reimagining things. And, I think that ties very much into the new campaign of Woven about imagination through science, and that whole way to reinfuse something into this brand of pharmaceutical marketing. It's very exciting.
Anything you want to add from that perspective, Dennis, too, in terms of what keeps you going from a creative perspective?
Yeah, I think, again, being in the industry for a long time, it's never feeling like you've done it all, and really charging up the team every time a job comes through. It's like, this is a huge opportunity to make a difference for people and make work that's emotional, immersive, culturally resonant, like do things that matter and move markets. Yes, win awards, maybe, but that get clients excited, because there's nothing better than being at an award show with a client. They're like, wow, we really cracked it. We did something special. And then to try and replicate that and bottle that. So I always get energized by the people around us. With Boundless joining us, I think they have a much bigger digital, creative, and AOR muscle to flex has made all the difference for the company. It just the partnerships internally. I know a lot of agencies say it's about our people, but every time I walk the virtual halls or we're together and traveling, it feels special. And it's really nice to be a part of something that's growing. And like Francesco said, we're all builders at heart, even though we've been doing it a long time. But yeah, really excited for where the agency's grown the last couple of years and excited to see what we do.
As am I, again, from the perspective of being on the sidelines and being able to see how the industry dynamics shift and everything. When I saw that deal go down over the summer, I was like, that's a very interesting move. And then obviously subsequent conversations I've had with folks at the agency, it really is exciting. So I wish you guys nothing but the best going forward. Looking forward to having more of those conversations, and hopefully we can have you on the show again to be able to highlight some of those new projects you're working on for clients.
Appreciate it. Look forward to it, Jack. Thanks for the time.
Jack.